When you are a student of the mysteries, uh, it's a good idea to do all of the assigned work that your teacher gives to you. And when you interact with your teacher will know whether you have done all the work or not. It depends on the demeanor that you present as you're working with your teacher, but it also depends upon the kinds of questions that you ask. I'm saying this because there are some questions I get, let's say on the Twitter account, um, where people say, okay, I've done all the work up to this point, but something I don't understand. What's this and this and this all about? One of those questions is for the Supreme Invoking Ritual of the Pentagram. Why, why is it done differently? Why do you start in the south and then go to the west and then go to the east and then go to the north? That doesn't make any sense. Could you please explain that? And I explained it, of course, but um, my thoughts secretly to myself are they haven't done the work because if you had studied the work, done all the reading, done all the ritual work, you would see that oh, the south corresponds to Atziluth, the west corresponds to Beriah, the east corresponds to Yetzirah, and the north corresponds to Asiya. These are the four worlds of Kabbalah. And that's the order in which they proceed. The highest world is Atziluth, which is represented by fire. The second highest world is Beriah, which is represented by water in the Golden Dawn system. And the next layer below that is Yetzirah, which is represented by air, again in the Golden Dawn system. And then at the bottom is Asiya, the world of action, where we live, and that corresponds to the north and to earth. And so Ragardi taught the Supreme Invoking Ritual of the Pentagram in that order, and that's also in the order of the Tetragrammaton, which students would also know if they had done the work. Okay, today let's talk about the four worlds of Kabbalah, and what I'd like to do is rescue these from being something so utterly mysterious and transcendental. Okay, so let's see if we can experience the four worlds as they exist right here and now. Okay, so the idea that the four worlds are, stacked one on top of the other, that's just a matter of convenience. Those are levels of activity, okay, or levels of lack of activity. But you can experience all four worlds in the present moment, more or less, okay? So if when somebody assumes that, oh, we're on the bottommost level and that's where we are now and that's all there is to it, and I have to do special things in order to experience the next highest level, to reach that level, I don't know, grow that high or something like that, right? Uh, all these ways of looking at it have some validity. Yes, you're expanding consciousness, so it gets bigger and higher and deeper. Sure, why not? But we have to remember that the idea of a vertical hierarchy is artificial, okay? And very often I tell my students to investigate the difference between a vertical hierarchy and a nested hierarchy, or the difference between a branched hierarchy and a nested hierarchy. And I don't really want to say much more about it than that. You look it up, look up those two concepts, see how they work. There's so much that can be gleaned from the difference between a nested hierarchy and a branched hierarchy, okay? Or a nested hierarchy and a vertical hierarchy. All right, so as you know, the tree of life is the primary system used in the Golden Dawn, okay, at least at first. Okay, well, it's pretty much the underlying system for the whole thing. There are other things that come into play. Um, and the the student in the outer order, at least in the Kabbalah Magic book, okay, the outer order as it exists today, uh, it goes through a process of building four trees into the aura. Hmm. 4 trees, okay? So the tree of life supposedly exists in 4 different worlds, okay? There are many ways of looking at the tree of life. You could look at it as in terms of a holographic universe. So like every sphera, every circle on this little diagram here has its own little tree inside it. And if you go into that little tree, every sphera on that tree has its own little tree inside it, and on and on and on ad infinitum. Okay, so the the tree of life is sort of this pattern that's pushed into creation from the smallest little microbe to the largest galaxy. The principles of it are operative at all scales. Okay, this according to the wisdom of Kabbalah. Okay, if you buy into it, and it's important to buy into it when you practice it. And yes, the student builds the tree into his or her aura in this way. Okay, and here's another diagram, pretty much of the tree of life built into the aura. Okay, now in the Kabbalah Magic Book, uh, the lowest level in this diagram, Asiya, the lowest of the 4 worlds, okay, the lowest of the 4 Kabbalistic worlds is Asiya, the world of action. And that, in this diagram, appears as the physical body, the figure in the midst of that bubble there, okay? And then the next higher world uh, manifests in this diagram as the sort of astral double or etheric double of, so in other words, like a glowing interior body, like a secondary body that's a glowing astral body. Okay, so inside this figure, you would see like a body of light glowing, and it pretty much sits inside the physical body, as it were. It is a higher level of the being, okay, but it resides within the skin, sort of, and it kind of glows toward the outside. Okay, so that is the next higher level. I mean, these things aren't necessarily true, absolutely, but this is the way that the 4 worlds appear in and around the human body, at least according to the Kabbalah Magic Book. Okay. The next higher level is Beriah. That's the world of creation. Okay, and that's represented by the bubble, by the aura itself. All right. So that is and of course, there's only one higher level than that. Okay, and Atziluth is the highest level. It cannot really be conceived of. The Atziluth cannot be depicted in any of these forms. Okay, it's beyond conception. So we merely represent it as the pattern of the tree itself with the 10 spheroth. Okay, there's 11 here. Anybody who studies Kabbalah would know why there's 11. But essentially, there's 10 spheroth on the tree of life, and there's also Da'ath, which is another sort of um, shadowy sphera, which exists in the throat, or it manifests there. Okay. All right. And of course, as one goes through the grades in the Kabbalah Magic Book, the grade of Earth corresponds to Asiya, which is the world of action, and that's where you will do some visualization with the physical body. You can even visualize it as a crystalline form if you want to, or just have it just visualize the physical body itself. And then in Theoricus, which is the grade of air, then you will visualize the astral double hovering inside the skin, glowing. Okay, and that will be in different colors. Okay, and as in each grade, like in the Theoricus grade, you'll sort of visualize this interior space in different colors, and you'll vibrate different names to attune yourself to different levels of Yetzirah. Okay, you're building trees into your aura. Okay, and then of course, oh well, um, yeah, and then of course in the grade of Beriah, then you will visualize the aura around the body, and that you'll do that progressively through various colors, and you vibrate various names of the Sephiroth. Okay, and then of course in the grade of Atziluth or Philosophus grade, you are picturing the tree of Atziluth, which is just the tree of life diagram superimposed upon the body, and that entire tree of life takes on various colors, and you vibrate various god names for that. Okay. And so layer upon layer, you're building this. And so you have this, by the time you're done, supposedly you have this sophisticated astral body with all these different colors and names built into it. Okay. Essentially, what you're doing is you're making friends with different levels of your powers of manifestation. Okay. So different as the as manifestation sort of condenses down and begins to crystallize into physical manifestation, you are making friends with all of these different levels. You're getting to know them. Okay, that's essentially what you're doing. And if you were to see the four worlds of Kabbalah on a single diagram of the tree, they can be represented this way. Okay, this is the way the Golden Dawn represented the four worlds. And I do find this uh, diagram to be better than the one that's maybe typical. This is more common, I think, in among other Kabbalists or kosher Kabbalists, maybe. Um, they see Buriya. Look at that second level there, Buriya. Uh, it has the three spheroth inside it, okay? And if you'll notice in this diagram, Buriya actually encompasses only two of the spheroth, okay? And this diagram I consider to be more accurate, more profound. Okay, they both have uh, virtues to them. All right. Uh, I'm going to talk about the different levels of manifestation. Okay, as we experience them. Okay, these things are not really all that mysterious. Certainly, the way I've been describing them so far makes them sound mysterious. Bria is the world of creation. Okay, Atziluth is the world of emanation. Yetzira is the world of formation, and Asiya is the world of action. Okay, very mysterious. What's the world of emanation? Okay, well, and of course, each of the four worlds could be conceived of as having a tree itself. Okay, as you can see here, the four elements are also related to the four worlds. Okay, some Kabbalists would rather see the four worlds in terms of decreasing density. So, in other words, as you rise upon the planes going up, it gets less dense. So, you start with earth, and then the Yetzira, they would say, is water, and then Bria is air because it's less dense, and finally, Atziluth is fire because it's the least dense of all. Okay. For the Golden Dawn, something much more profound was done, in my opinion, and that is there's a vibration pattern incorporated into this. So it's sort of if you proceed from this way, okay, this is the highest level, this is the lowest level of manifestation, okay. So you can see it goes from active to passive to active to passive. So yes, it gets increasingly dense as it goes down, but it basically descends lower here, then it goes higher and less dense, but then even more dense. So virtually no density at all, very dense, not very dense, super dense. Okay, so it's almost like a vibrational pattern as the power descends, like a wave pattern. This is very profound. Uh, And it is not the only way of looking at it, of course, but it is super useful, and I'm about to show you why. And of course, the Tetragrammaton, the Yud, He, Vav, He of Jehovah or Yahovah or Yahovo. Um, the Yud in this case corresponds to Asiluth, uh, more or less, and of course Hakma. Okay, and then of course the first He, where, where you see the shoulders, that is that's Beriah, and the trunk of the body is Yetzirah, And of course, the lower body is Asya, that world of action. Okay, so now we have come across the experiential aspects of the four worlds. Okay, to experience these or to look at these more directly and more concretely, I'm going to turn to Advaita Vedanta, which is a wisdom tradition, very, very old wisdom tradition from India. Uh, Advaita Vedanta means non-dual Vedanta. It's a non-dual tradition. Tantra is involved with that, and anyway, um, according to Vedanta, the lowest level is your waking consciousness. And so the consciousness that you have when you're awake in the world, transacting business, when you go out and pay your taxes, okay, when you do the gardening, when you do work around the house, when you're eating, okay, the world of action, okay, this is the world of your waking consciousness and the physicality, the literal world, okay. Um, The waking consciousness is the lower level, okay? And notice how it's not necessarily a lower level, it is the most concentrated level, okay? So notice how in this diagram, it's sort of, yes, we're going up, but not really. We're not really going up, we're going out. So we're expanding outward into less and less dense regions, okay? This looks a lot like the astrological version of the universe, where we have the condensing spheres of power. How curious. The next layer up then, which okay, so waking consciousness would correspond to Asiya, the world of action. The next Kabbalistic world is Yetzirah, the world of formation, and this is the world of dreams. Okay, imagination, dreams, daydreams, reveries. Okay, the world of hallucinations. Okay, so the things you see in your mind's eye, and this is the place where you go and you are dreaming at night. At night, okay, and that is the world of Yetzirah. Okay, then the next higher level is deep sleep, where there supposedly are no dreams at all. It's just blackout. Okay, and so for most of us, these are the only three levels that we are aware of. So we have the waking consciousness, dreamy sleep, and then deep dreamless sleep. And we only know about dreamless sleep is because we wake up and we don't know where we were completely gone, and all we know is that we slept night. It was a good sleep. I slept really well. I slept deeply. Some people would even say I slept happily, as though somehow they remember at least that this was very nice. They were very happy when they were in their deep sleep, which they can't remember. Okay, so the interesting thing here is that there is a fourth level. Okay, and that would be the white page. Okay, so it's a white space outside of human consciousness here. So Absolute would be represented by the white space around that. And in Vedanta, they did have a word for that. They simply called it Turiya, uh, and all that really means is the fourth state. Okay, many adepts of that tradition refer to it as deathlessness. Okay, because as we rise on the planes here, when we go into deep sleep, we black out. And suppose that's the same thing that happens when you die. You black out and then you become non existent. You get snuffed out of existence and then you're gone. But then miraculously, somehow you come back, you reincarnate. It's like you reemerge, okay? So the same thing happens at night. You basically go into maybe a dreamy reverie, and then you descend very quickly into deep sleep. And then earlier in the morning, then you hover around in the dreamy sleep level. Okay. Uh, and during the night, do you ever get to Absolute? Maybe we should talk about that. Uh, Problem with deep sleep that this blacking out that happens in deep sleep, that's actually an illusion because there is no darkness on that higher level of Bria. Okay. Um, but essentially, what we should talk about then is, let me go to a previous diagram here. All right, this diagram. So let's go in descending order from Kether all the way down to Malkuth, or from Atziluth all the way down to Asiya. Okay. In Atziluth, everything is completely unified. So there are no forces that are interacting with each other. Okay. And if you don't have anything interacting with itself, or you know, manipulating, if you don't have multiple objects, nothing can be seen to exist. Okay, so Absolute is already in a state of unmanifestation. Okay, the only thing that's sort of manifest more or less within it is potentiality. Okay, so when somebody dies, they go all the way up to the top, supposedly, they black out, they're going to oblivion, but they enter the state of pure potentiality, and eventually they can come out of it again. This happens to us when we sleep at night too, if we get a good night's sleep. Okay, we go all the way across the abyss, disappear into nothingness, and then come back out again. And in a sense, this is happening every second of every day as well. There's this angels ascending and descending all the way up and down the tree of life. We're just somehow not aware of all the different levels, or we don't seem to be aware of all the different levels. Okay, so at Kether or at Atziluth, everything is undifferentiated. It's just, you could see it as a sea of pure, translucent brilliance, not opaque whiteness, but pure, a sea of pure, transparent light. Okay. Now with Beriah, you'll notice you have these two sphera, the Hokmah and Bina. Those two now represent the principle of vibration, which is now um, perceivable. Okay, that's the vibration between light and darkness. Okay, so at this level, that's the world. That's the world of creation. This is where things begin to manifest, where this versus that comes into play. Okay, so you cannot really perceive anything as existing unless it can be perceived as other than yourself, and this begins to happen in Beriah. Okay, uh, that's why there's darkness here, because anything that penetrates beyond Beriah will cease to exist. And what happens is that our human minds will make darkness out of that. It's like oblivion. This is the oblivion monster that we talked about earlier, okay? And so this is a horrible, frightening situation, you know. But one way to look at the blackness, the endless black nothingness of Beriah, is that it is completely unobstructed, and light is shining through it. But since there are no objects floating around in Beriah, there's nothing for that light to bounce off of. So you might want to picture yourself floating in space, and if you don't have any objects around you, it'll be all black all around you. If you're floating in outer space, everything's all black. Okay, can't see a thing except for the stars. Okay, but then of course you hold up your hand and there's light bouncing off of it. Where is this light coming from? I couldn't see the light before. Well, because the light is passing through space effortlessly. Okay, but now that you hold up your hand, there's light bouncing off of it. Oh, the light was here all along. So the darkness is really very much an illusion. It can be a very profound thing to understand, because when you disappear into the dark of deep sleep every night, the oblivion, or the complete lack of awareness that we suppose to experience, is an illusion. And what that means is it is possible to retain awareness going into that state and enter this sea of pure white brilliance of Absolute. Okay. And in that sense, Absolute does not really exist. It is simply the light that has been there all along, shining through the darkness. All right. So really, this level of Beriah is only the outward appearance of the divine, which is scary and dark because it looks like oblivion. Okay, because if you're entering a sea of undifferentiated beingness, your standard idea of existence cannot hold up. You'll be annihilated. Okay, uh, but consciousness still exists at that level. Okay, which is of course indestructible. Okay, so there is nothing to fear, but of course, if you are attached to your body, of course, that is eventually going to die. Okay, so in that sense, as a biological entity, there's plenty to fear, of course, because we have an instinct to be afraid of extinction. Okay, so that's difficult to describe. Okay, but you can see now that the light of Atziluth and the darkness of Bria, they are really the same, or like maybe two sides of the same coin. Okay, now let's attach something interesting to this diagram. Let's say that the light of Absolute is red, and uh, the darkness of Bria is blue, just for convenience sake. Okay. Um, the interesting thing is that the light of red, the redness and the blueness will combine. As the red shines through the blue, they will combine and form purple. Okay, and so at Yetzirah, you could say that, well, Yetzirah is a purple world because it now has the combination of the red and the blue together. Okay, and if you were to be able, if you're floating around in Yetzirah, if you look really closely at anything that's going on, okay, um, you you'll see it has strands or speckles of red and blue. You're trying to find where the purple is. There is no purple. But of course, you're backing off and everything looks purple. Okay. I'm not saying that Yetzirah is a purple world. I'm just doing this out of convenience. Okay. So basically, to show how Ataluth and Bria combine to produce this sort of mirage, this illusion of Yetzirah. Now, Yetzirah is a world of dreams and phantoms and ghosts and images and memories. That's the astral plane. It's where we go when we dream at night, supposedly. And if you become awake in well, if you wake up while you're dreaming, which is possible, and examine the world you're in, you might even see that it's if you start to look closely, it's really a combination of light and darkness and oscillation or vibration. Okay, so you begin to see Atziluth and Bria at play in Yetzirah. Okay, and then of course, and if you'll notice in the Golden Dawn color system, this is the way they portray it. So if you are working with Tifareth, let's say that's the center Sephira, that's Sphira, uh, you you're going to be you can work with Tifareth in all four worlds. Okay, and Tifareth has a color in all the various worlds. Okay, so Tifareth in the world of Atziluth is uh, it's rosy pink, translucent rosy pink. Okay, transparent rose pink color. Okay, then Tifareth in the world of Bria is gold, like the gold of the philosophers, the gold of the rising sun, golden dawn. And then suddenly in Yetzirah, Tifareth is salmon colored. What you're noticing then is that the clear pink rose of Atziluth and the gold color of Berea have now mixed together and they are now salmon colored. Okay? And then for Asiya, then we can have a further mixture of colors. Okay? It becomes very muddled at that point. It becomes this, darker versions of these mixtures of colors. Okay? But primarily the top three worlds, Atziluth, Bria, and Yetzirah. Yetzirah in the Golden Dawn system of color tends to be a mixture of the colors of the two worlds above. So if you look at the color scales of the Golden Dawn uses for the four worlds, you will notice that they tend to represent this mixture of color, okay? Very profound teaching going on there. What this is telling you, though, it's like you're floating around in Yetzirah, you are still floating around in Bria and Atziluth at the same time. These things are not existing at different levels. The principles of Asiya and the principles of Bria are actually present in the world of Yetzirah. And the same thing goes for Asiya. All three of the worlds above are now concentrated upon the physical world below. Okay, this is the secret of the Trinity and the quaternary. Okay, the triangle and the square. Okay, that the Trinity exists in the quaternary. If you're interested in these sort of hermetic puzzles, okay, why the number 4 and the number 3 are so important. The number 3 is represents forces that are not stabilized yet, that are not manifested, and the number 4 then represents the three levels of Atziluth, Bria, and Yetzirah now combining and focused in to create some kind of physical manifestation in Malkuth, in Asiya, the world of action. Okay. So let's see now. Um, so when you go to sleep every night, you are essentially crossing the abyss. This is the thing that Crowley claimed to have done. He claims to have been initiated past the abyss, and many people doubt that he has been, or that he had been. Now, the abyss exists at the level of Bria, which is that darkness, the place of blacking out. Okay, so when you have dreamless sleep every night and there's this darkness that you disappear into and that you emerge from, this is the abyss. Okay, it is possible to maintain awareness when you cross that abyss. Of course, crossing it becomes a bit strange to say because I've just revealed to you that the separation between the divine and the human world doesn't actually exist. Okay, if that's the case, if all the worlds are present with us right now, okay, then why all this fuss over the abyss? If you remember on the level of Bria, okay, that's when duality first appears. Okay, this is the duality between subject and object. And at the very basic level, you and I experience subject and object all the time. It's built into it's the way our consciousness works. There's me and everything that's happening to me. Okay. So all the dramas that we create about our life and our, specialness and all this stuff, that results from the duality of the perceiver versus the perceived. Okay. Now this duality of perceiver versus the perceived is the root essence of all kinds of conditioning and trauma. And it's the reason why we suffer. And if you can see through that subject object dichotomy that our nervous system is constantly creating, supposedly then you can stop suffering. You don't suffer anymore. In fact, you become quite jolly and you end up laughing at uh, things that happen. So much so that people might think you're a bit insane. Um, it doesn't mean you don't cry. It doesn't mean you still participate in the drama of the world, but there tends to be an intense enjoyment to it, knowing that it's not real. Okay. If you'll take a look at this, you can see this gentleman here is standing in front of a chasm. This is the abyss. Okay. Now, if the abyss is simply the gap between subject and object. That's all it really is. Okay, and it manifests at night as the utter blackness of oblivion that you supposedly cross into, go into, disappear into, come back out of. And this is crossing the abyss. Now, the interesting thing in this diagram is that there is a sword bridge. This is the Grail legend. Okay, this is one of the pictures from the Grail legend. Obviously, this guy wants to reach the Grail, which is floating in the sky, which is a symbol of ultimate unity. Okay, so he exists in the world of separation. Okay, so in other words, he exists in Berea and below. Okay, because in Berea, as you recall, that's where we get the separation between light and darkness happening. Okay, uh, so anybody who exists below that level of duality exists uh, in a world of duality. Okay, uh, and you notice the sword is being pointed outward towards the other. So the sense of self and the sense of the other is bridged by a sword. Okay, this is not so complicated a symbol as you might think. Okay, you might imagine now he now has to walk the razor's edge along this sword to get to the other side. Yeah. Well, nice thing is he could just pick up the sword and basically sheath it, put it away, and then the other side of the chasm would simply come in to join. It's it's that sword that's keeping the world at bay. The sword, his looking at the world, seeing everything out there as dangerous or tantalizing or treacherous, and him pointing his sword at it, accusing it of hurting him or enticing him or leading him into error. This attitude is what creates that duality. Okay, so the abyss is actually a product of the nervous system as it creates that self and other, okay, which is fundamental to all living things, which once you begin to perceive a sense of self, then you begin to take care of yourself versus everything else going on around you. There is the abyss, okay? And you might see that when the self dissolves, then there is no self and other, and then you just basically are back out everywhere all at once again. That's you crossing the abyss, okay? What this might indicate to you then is yes, it's possible to cross the abyss while you are in this form. You don't have to literally die. All you have to be able to do is see through this mirage of self versus other. Okay? That can happen in very ordinary moments. It happened to me in the Zalater grade, and I barely noticed it at the time. I was like, what was that? But I had my wits about me and I did notice it. And of course, it's a sensation that has grown ever since then. Um, so now, when we talk about the ultimate initiation of crossing the abyss, this would mean permanent enlightenment. So, in other words, you are permanently now in touch with the state of non-duality, and you do not fall into error again. It is not possible for you to uh, become non-lucid and get caught up in the dramas of the subject-object existence anymore. Okay, that is an experience. Well, first of all, the ability to experience non-duality is not difficult. If you learn meditation, you can get there fairly easily. Okay, you can get there fairly easily by doing the Golden Dawn techniques. Okay, but you'll mainly get flashes of awareness. Okay, and eventually, supposedly, you can enter a state where you're permanently in touch with the non-dual level of existence, where you're walking around in Atziluth, the highest world, all the time. Okay, and of course, uh, the funny thing is, you'll laugh at yourself because it's like, oh, it's always been this way. I haven't really achieved anything because, as we've already demonstrated here, the higher worlds are already present within the lower worlds. Okay, yeah. So uh, I hope to shed some light on the four worlds of Kabbalah to show how they all sort of operate within you right now, all at once. And it might be worth just thinking, let's say, well, Okay, so when I go to sleep every night, if it's a good sleep, I disappear into the darkness and then I emerge again. Why can't I remember that? And then you might want to remind yourself that that level of absolute, which is you supposedly can't remember, doesn't just exist while you're sleeping. It exists right now. It's actually present right now. So what is it about my current level of understanding or whatever it is, my current level of consciousness that keeps me from experiencing absolute consciously? Okay. I think all you really need to look at is this sword that is holding the chasm apart. Okay. So you have this sort of aggressive attitude towards your world. Okay. Or a sort of needy attitude, a crisis oriented attitude towards the world that is keeping you from experiencing absolute. Okay. Yeah. So once again, yeah, and of course, when you're doing the Golden Dawn grade work, uh, you are now building all of these levels into the aura and experiencing them as they manifest. Okay, so you start at the lowest level, and you're tuning into the body and how it feels. Okay, and already within the body, you feel all four elements and vibration, whatever, and you begin to sense the higher worlds already operative there, but you can't quite make sense of it yet. Then the next level is where you visualize the astral double, and then you see their more rarefied forms there in vibration, sort of a swirling mist of faces and forms, things that are trying to take shape. This is a world of formation. Um, then the aura around the body, which is just a uniform glow, almost like a barrier. Okay, where it's just like a wall of color around you, or of course, if it's a solid bubble of color around you. And then eventually you'll penetrate through all that. And at the greater philosophers, you start to visualize the tree diagram itself penetrating through all that, cutting through all that. Okay. And that, of course, can represent the sword itself. So if some of you have seen diagrams of the tree of life, where there is a sword descending from on high, which is the sword of the cherubim, which keep you out of paradise. Okay, well, that sword is in your hand, and you are using it to keep reality at bay. This is your subject object nervous system at work. And of course, if you learn how to sheathe that sword, figuratively speaking, you can experience the divine consciously right here, right now. All right, so I don't know if that clarified some things for you guys. I certainly hope it did. Um, I know it can be quite confusing as well. I threw a lot of new terms out there, but of course, if you've been doing the Golden Dawn work, all these terms are familiar to you. All right, so until next time.